Greetings all. Welcome to a special edition of the Enterprise Edge podcast. This is actually a special series that we're doing in partnership with SAP entitled Supply Chain Planning Reimagined. This is a two-part series, and we will be bringing together perspectives from solution providers and end customers to unpack how supply chain leaders are envisioning the future of supply chain planning, moving from monthly forecast reviews to more continuous AI-enabled planning that keeps pace with what's going on in the market. We'll also learn from real examples of AI agents that are making partially autonomous supply chain decisions, the governance frameworks that enable the trust and the path to enterprise scale deployment. So this is episode 1. This is our opening episode, and it's called The Vision Shift, Reimagining Supply Chain Planning. I am pleased to be joined by two distinguished guests today. First, we have Xavier Duprat. He is the Vice President of Supply Chain Planning and Fulfillment at Cascades. Founded in 1964, Cascades employs about 10,000 people and offers sustainable, innovative, and value-added solutions for packaging, hygiene, and recovery needs. The company has run SAP Integrated Business Planning, or IBP, since 2016, deploying S&OP, or Sales and Operations Planning, across multiple business units and navigating dramatic demand shifts, including what happened during COVID-19. We are also pleased to welcome Joel Beal, CEO and co-founder of SAP partner Alloy AI, which is a purpose-built retail analytics platform that ingests real-time POS and channel inventory data from over 450 retailers and feeds it directly into SAP IBP, enabling consumer brands to sense demand shifts and improve forecast accuracy by up to 35%. So welcome, gentlemen. Welcome, Joel. Welcome, Xavier. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Mark. Excited to be here.
Yeah, good day. Likewise, very excited to be along you guys.
Great. We are glad to have you. We're gonna get into a lively discussion, but then again, as it always goes on these podcasts, folks, if you've got comments, if you've got questions, if you've got similar experiences, please drop a comment in the comment field. Keep the dialogue going, keep the learning going. We will circle back with you, connect you with the right people, and hopefully help move your business forward. Certainly in the area of supply chain planning, but really anywhere. All right, so let's talk a little bit, guys. Let's get into the first tier of our conversation here around reimagining supply chain planning. So Gartner data and other sources that I've seen shows that some of the best companies are still only hitting around 70% forecast accuracy. And if you look at that number sort of longitudinally, it hasn't changed a whole lot over recent years, at least en masse, as a macro indicator, right? But the both of you, and we'll talk about the relationship that you all have and how you've partnered, but both of your organizations sort of made a bet that the problem really wasn't in how you forecast, but it's really the data that you feed into the forecast. And as I stated in the introduction, Alloy AI built a platform around real-time point of sale and channel inventory signals from all these hundreds of retailers. Cascades overhauled its entire S&OP process across, I think, 25 some odd North American plants with SAP IBP. And I'm doing a very broad brush summary on what has happened. But Xavier, maybe we'll start with you. You know, what was you might call it a breaking point or the realization point where it became undeniable from your role and your remit that the old model of planning and forecasting wasn't just sort of underperforming, but it was structurally inadequate, out of date. You choose the word, but it just wasn't sufficient anymore. Was there a moment or was there a realization that you had, and what led to that?
Well, first of all, you're right, Mark. The transformation, the SNOP, the importance of SNOP as part of let's say the process of planning is the foundation, right? So for the past 15 years, we've been really working on SNOP process, And at that time, we were working with also legacy system. So obviously, SAP, IBP came on board and gave us the, let's say, the platform to effectively manage SNOP and eventually link it with SNOE and execution. But the most important signal is the demand, and it's the, let's say, customer demand was always the fundamental piece. But over the years and recently with the partnership that we did with Joule is the goal. The ultimate goal is to extend and have the consumer demand, which is for us, which has been the game changer for the past 2 years. And traditionally, you get that data, from different system. You get it, sometimes it's flat file, sometimes it's just having and we started that whole collaboration meetings also with partners, retailers, distributors, but really the game changers to have that data on a daily basis again and to be synchronized with our partners. And I guess, Joel, you're going to talk about it, but Alloy is mostly focused on retailers because retailers share their data. So, and it's not just daily point of sale data. It's the retailer sales plan, demand plan, supply plan, and then that intersects with our own models. And then we can have the really good discussion on forecasting. Short-term forecasting, yes, but most importantly also is the, let's say, long-term forecast, and retailers in general have that. And the fact that it's embedded in the systems, it brings a lot more value. It's quicker. Obviously, there's one set of numbers. So we have the discussion, let's say, much more efficiently than we were in the past, and we're able to integrate, let's say, the retailer forecast as part of our statistical forecast model. So from a foundation perspective, that's really the game changer for us is really to have the right level, right conversation with our partners, at least on the retail side.
That's great. That's great. And speaking of which, Joel, maybe you could talk a little bit about the partnership that you have with Cascades, and maybe what did you see with Cascades? What made them an ideal candidate to benefit from what you all have built over the last, I think, 10 years, right? I think you guys have been in operation for a decade. Is that right?
It's just around a decade now. Hard to believe.
Yep.
So I think you touched on a couple things in your question of like, why aren't we getting more accurate at forecasting?
Yeah.
And I think there's been a lot of questions about this. And when you look at what goes into a forecast, I mean, there's the methodology, which actually has changed quite a bit. I mean, a lot of it's been developed for decades. I mean, a lot of the core statistics, but machine learning's definitely made some pretty significant gains. But we really are going at the problem saying those are kind of commodities. I mean, everybody can get access to these models. They're pretty easy to apply. The real differentiator is what data do you have to put into it? And I think it's both the breadth of the data and the quality of the data. So I think, when Xavier is saying, I'm sure they've been working with retail data far before we showed up on the scenes. You're trying to incorporate that. You can purchase syndicated data. Retailers are sharing things. As he said, it's just coming in all sorts of different formats. And so it becomes at that point, a cleansing problem. How do I normalize it? How do I incorporate this into my processes, where I think a lot of this tends to break down, and where probably why we're not seeing the improvements is just, it's cumbersome. It's hard to do. It takes a lot of time. Time really matters here because if you can't get it done in a certain period, you're going to say, I got to do it monthly because I can't do it weekly. I don't have the manpower and that ability. So I think that's, again, our philosophy is very much, we're always trying to push the models too, but it's how do we give you the cleanest, fastest kind of data set? And, as was mentioned in our world, this is what consumers are actually purchasing. Right. So it's the best signal to tell you what that retailer is going to order.
Right.
But getting to this is still very much a people and a process and a change management. What's so amazing about Xavier and his organization is how they've embraced that. And I think you see some organizations that say, in theory, everybody agrees in theory this is a good idea. I've yet to meet a company that says, oh yeah, we shouldn't incorporate real-time consumption demand.
Right.
But there's a lot that say, it sounds like a lot of work, and I don't want to change processes that I've been running for decades. And,
Right.
it works well enough. I actually
Right.
found COVID broke a lot of those assumptions. But before then, I was in so many conversations, and people would be like, I've been doing this for 50 years, like, or my company has. It's kind of worked.
Yeah.
And so I think that's where you see the difference is, folks like Xavier who say, we're going to try something different. We're going to keep pushing here. And that's, that's what we've seen in that organization and for companies that we've seen make the big steps.
And
Got it.
and Joel, what you say, the IBP integration also is extremely powerful, because you can, when we start working with together 3 years ago, it's a fairly new relationship, right? So we started with just POS data, standalone on the side, and we saw the benefits really quick on, let's say, the fulfillment side. But the ERP integration, which we did last year, is really, again, a game changer for forecasting, because you're directly connected with all of your partners. So for example, I can give you a concrete example from this week. We saw right away the shift from one of our retailer, their forecast jumped by 40% in July, and we saw it right away. In the past, it would have taken probably at least a couple more weeks. Maybe we would learn that the supply plan changed at the last minute because we get let's say a surplus of orders. But we were able to flag it automatically just because it's integrated with our system, with IBP. And we always cross match forecast from the retailer, our forecast, and also there's an Alloy forecast. So we have 3 different feeds of forecast in one place, and right away we can detect if there's an anomaly or something, an outlier that pops up. And in that case, we were able to right away identify it, get back to the retailer, ask question, why is this happening? Why do we see that in 2 months from now? Are you doing some kind of activity, promotional, etc.? So, but my point is that an integration really makes you more proactive as a partner. So for me, as a partner with the retailers, that's value right there. And there's tons of examples. This one on forecasting specific, I think is really interesting. But for those who are, contemplating or working with Alloy, I think really the integration of the system is drives the value also, because you can always do it standalone, but the connection, to have the data connected, end-to-end visibility, that's super important for us. And we always keep pushing and deploying new development with the Alloy team. We're always pushing on new ideas, how we can improve forecasts and stuff like that. So it's really a strong partnership that we have together.
No, it's great. It's inspiring, guys, and it's it kind of leads into the next question of sort of joint innovation and problem solving and moving the ball forward. And I talk a lot about speed these days, right? With a lot of the companies I work with and how fast things seem to be evolving, certainly in relation to the AI era, but it just seems that the pace of business and the requirements and expectations of customers and the agility of competitors, it just seems as though the pace of business has picked up in a way that seems to be unprecedented on the surface in many cases. And so in that spirit, there's this concept, I'm not going to get too academic, but there's this concept called complexity theory, where there's this idea of requisite variety. And that basically means that that your control system has to be at least as complex as the system that it's managing, right? And I want to get much more detailed than that, but bringing it into the S&OP space, traditional methodologies were, you'd have monthly S&OP cycles where planners would have like 12 decision points, basically once a month decision point every year, right? Effectively synchronizing supply and operations. And Alloy is feeding and that all important data set of consumer purchase behavior into Xavier's your planning processes and models, and you've had to, like you described, you're synchronizing demand and supply constantly across, your container board and tissue business and specialty packaging almost simultaneously. And I guess this is a long way around of asking, in this sort of hyper velocity environment, how have you closed this gap between what you might say is more of a batch process, where it's like once a month, kind of a true up process, to more of a continuous process where it's more real time, opportunistic might be the wrong word, but it's more real time, at pace with the pace that the world is moving at. Xavier, maybe you could just tell me a little bit, if you understand the question, kind of how has that gap been closed? How have you closed that gap as an organization?
Yeah. So, like you said, the typically S&OP process, 12 times a year, every month, there's a cadence. For sure, that's important. We maintain that. So for sure,
Yep.
we have that cadence in place. We have the rigor. It's kind of your budget that you kind of redo every month. So that's already in place. That's in place. Of course, it translates to weekly and daily execution. So I can tell you that, especially now that we have at least on the retail side, for the tissue sector, we have that kind of visibility. For sure, we are much more agile and proactive on a weekly, daily basis. So for sure, that enables that agility, I would say, because planning is about managing different horizons that eventually collide and intersect. So the monthly horizon comes into a weekly horizon. So super important to have those two tied together, and really to have that sensing capability through Alloy on point of sale data. So we're tracking over 20,000 store on a daily basis. That, again, to come back to our previous point, that it's integrated in our IBP or ERP. Again, that's very powerful because we don't waste time, to connect systems together or retailers together. We have that in front of our eyes on a daily basis, so we can very quickly identify and be more proactive on a daily or weekly basis. So without going too much into detail, I mean, from a high level perspective, that's extremely powerful because everybody needs that agility. You cannot say you just run once a month and that's how I run my business. That's impossible. Like you say, there's too much. The speed is faster than before. The requirements from partners, retailers, distributors is higher than before. There's more turbulence when you look from a macroeconomic, political perspective, climate. There's a lot more events than we had in the past. So we need that agility. And ultimately, we need to serve our customer and that's another topic. But traditionally, we were looking at OTIF on our side, so on time in full. But now, especially since we partner with Joel, the in-stock is the most important metric that we follow, because the most important thing, again, is to have the product on the shelf for the consumers. That's what drives us, and that's what drives our planning and execution today. And that's a big step change that we did since we partnered together. It opened our eye, to that the real metric that we need to follow, because you can have a perfect OTIF, but the shelf could be empty. So it's really important for us, especially in these times, to make sure we have all the tools to be proactive and make sure all the shelves, all the product are there at 100%.
Oh, that's great. And Joel, I'm thinking, putting myself in your shoes a little bit, and maybe you can help us understand. Like, I'm listening to Xavier, and I'm thinking about these as requirements. These are evolving operational requirements that are customer centric, right? And his customer, right? And I'm curious, if you go back to the origin of the partnership, was there something unique or recognizable about the challenges that Cascades was having that made you confident that Alloy had the answer? That's sort of the first question. Is like, what made them a good fit for what the platform you guys had built? have built? And then second, how has that understanding evolved and perhaps even pushed the direction of your platform in terms of its capabilities? Have you had to rise to the challenge or offer more continuous or more responsive data or different data sets? Or tell me a little bit about how your own business has evolved from the beginning of the relationship with Cascades.
Sure. So I think it starts with, we work exclusively with basically consumer products companies that, are selling through retail. Now we touch physical retail, we do e-commerce, we do professional channels. We really do all sorts of different distribution, but retail still, I would say, our bread and butter. And that's where we have the deepest experience. And so we have a lot of confidence when we go in, and I'm sure we met Xavier, I think, a couple of years ago at the Gartner Supply Chain Conference. And when we understand what someone's distribution looks like, and Cascade has multiple business units, and we don't touch some as much, but certainly on the consumer side, we can flip a switch at this point and get that visibility, as he said, into 20,000 stores. I mean, it's something that we've done so many times. So from our level, that's pretty straightforward, right?
Yep.
We can do it quickly, and I think it was a couple days after we actually got started with Cascade, they were seeing that first data coming through.
Got it.
But I think to the second point, look, we see a wide range of how people adopt getting that data. It's like all of a sudden you turn on a fire hose.
Yeah.
And for most companies, again, they've been getting this data, they have access to it, but all of a sudden they've got this normalized stream of 20,000, 50,000, whatever it is, number of stores and however many SKUs they have coming in every day. And very rarely are people looking at daily data before we get to them. Usually, if they're doing anything manually, it's weekly at best.
Yeah.
And that's where you see a difference. Some folks are going to say, look, my goal is just to better understand consumer demand. I need to have better reporting, tell better stories internally. There's a ton of value in that. But of course, our goal is to push that a lot further. And I think that is where Cascade has been an incredible partner of saying, first of all, and most of our customers do this as well, I want to really integrate this in with my supply chain. This isn't just about getting better visibility for sales and better, kind of retail partnerships. This is about how do I operate my business, so it's really, this demand-driven supply chain. Right. And specifically with Cascade, they push us, and these are our favorite customers. I mean, we love working with them because we don't know everything. We are not the practitioners that they are. We are a technology provider. Now we work with a lot of companies. We learn a lot of best practices. Yeah. But there's nothing better than someone saying, hey, let me show you this specific problem. We are trying to do this. We've got all the pieces. Can we work together to build that? And right. I think a lot of the best innovations that we've created, I wish I could say we came out of them. We came up with them, out of the void, or we were so smart, but it's really somebody saying, guys, why aren't you doing that? And we're like, that's that makes a lot of sense. So I think when you talk about that, and like I said, it just speaks to the organizations that are pushing it. Now, one more thing that came to mind as you were talking earlier, and kind of this speed, going from monthly to weekly to daily. The first retailers, now e-commerce, it's real time, right? I'm seeing it the moment the order comes in. But talking about physical retail, where there's more complexity, and it's an older industry, really. We have retailers now that are reporting, hourly inventory levels and hourly point of sale. So this is going to it's going to get real time there too eventually. And so it's kind of like, how much are you pushing? Are you somebody who's sitting there being like, I don't even want to be thinking about things on a daily level, and to be like, your competitors are going to be thinking about hourly and then real time as that data becomes more and more available. And speaking of lost sales and an out of stock, if I only have weekly data, I only see at the end of the week where I'm at. If I only have daily data, I only see at the end of the day. Do I have a null? So you really need to see the hourly, the real time, to be like, oh, there was a gap of 2 hours. And in fast moving consumer goods, so like Cascade's in, that matters, right? I want to
Yeah.
see any
Yeah.
gap in the shelf. And so, there's a lot of value to getting this more real-time data. Obviously, supply chains take time to move products around. But I think, we're going to see more and more differentiation across companies of those that are kind of running after this problem and excited about it, and those that are lagging and I think are going to lose as a result.
Mm.
Yeah,
Can
for
I
sure. Yeah. Go ahead, Xavier. Yep. Go ahead.
I mean, it's such a great conversation. Just one. I'm reflecting at the same time, Joel. What you're mentioning. I think the important aspect we didn't touch on is, the integration goes both ways, right? So it's not just from retailers to IBP or Cascade, but it's the other way around. And really, again, a key differentiator is that Alloy is for us is the perfect platform to speak to our partners because let's say we have 10 different retailers, we want to speak their language, right? So being able to bring again our planning data, inventory data, bring that into Alloy and then instantly go from one retailer to another in terms of because they have unique, let's say, languages, they have unique different calendars, different way they call their product. So but fundamentally, everybody talks about in stock, lost sales. So again, to be able to pivot like that quickly. Internally, we have our language, we look at things as, globally, but then we can pivot and be customer facing. So we have planning teams, we have customer fulfillment teams. So there's different news, obviously, to working together in that partnership. And also, eventually, we're going to touch base about it probably, but when we start introducing AI agents, eventually
Mhm.
also it will be interesting on both sides. So internally and externally with retailers when we speak their language, because
Yep.
IBP is not really made, you know, to speak to customer. It's going to be complicated. It's not the place to do that. But we think that Alloy is a good place to be able to enable that next step sooner than later.
No, it's a great segue, Xavier. In fact, the AI topic is unavoidable, right?
Exactly.
It has to be
Mhm.
discussed, and that's where we're going to head next
Yeah.
because um, it's almost like like I said before, timetables have shifted, playbooks no longer apply, at least in some cases.
Mm.
The performance ceiling is now for anything, any business function in terms of productivity and throughput and things like that is now sort of being challenged by the new capability that AI brings us, whether it's generative or conversational or agentic AI or any of the other flavors. And there are companies out there like McKinsey, well-respected companies that are estimating that in supply chain specifically, AI can reduce forecasting errors incrementally by up to like 50%. And they can cut, you know, AI tools, generically speaking, could cut lost sales by 65%. These are massive numbers that presumably are based on McKinsey's own research, right? Alloy AI itself, we talked about in the intro, are already claiming and I think realizing 35% improvement in demand planning accuracy, right? So, I think in all of that, right? Cascade, you're on a great journey here that's not over, right? I'm not sure it'll ever be over, right? It's a continuous, iterative
Mm.
process in partnership with folks like SAP and Alloy. And I think one of the things that you're able to do is you're responding way faster to volatility in demand than perhaps historically was the case. Maybe COVID is a great example of that, right? When demand shifted dramatically. And so I guess the question, again, with that backdrop, for maybe we'll go to Xavier to begin with, is based on where we are now, based on where you and your team is at now, where is the incremental value to be had within your planning processes, presumably on the shoulders of things like agents and things like that? Where is that value to be had? Have you begun to uncover those additional value creation opportunities? What are some of those remaining obstacles, perhaps, that you're still facing? as you continue to move this ship forward and continue to refine the precision, the accuracy, the productivity, the throughput, the responsiveness, all the things that have always been the aspiration of, S&OP as a discipline.
Hmm. Well, for sure. But first of all, COVID, it's still, 5 years ago? So that's
Yep.
kind of old stuff. So for sure, everybody heard about the toilet paper panic buy
Yep.
and stuff like that. But we still see those, not to that scale, but let's say last year we had a port strike in the U.S. We
Mhm.
saw a panic buy. We see panic buy earlier this year when we had freezing and snowstorm in the south of the U.S. So we still see those events, and they're gonna keep happening for sure. Not to the level that we have, hopefully, in 5 years ago, but these happen. And you're right. I mean, the idea is to be. We sense those events. We're able to to be a lot more proactive. And in those circumstances, you often need to do, let's say, allocation, move product around, and we know where the product needs to go. That's the difference versus, let's say, 5 years ago. We just follow what the retailer wants. There's too much demand for the supply, and then we end up not sending the product to the right place. So the difference today is that we know where to send the product, and we're able to manage and overcome, generally speaking, those events that are extraordinary.
Yep.
And
Yep.
for sure, we saw in the first year of implementation, sorry, we saw the lost sale. First of all, we had no idea of the magnitude of lost sale that we had. So that's the first thing. And then just in the first year, after a year, we're able to cut it by half, and it's quite a significant amount in dollars. So the value, obviously, for us, the number one value is the lost sale, the in stock. So it opened our eyes to in stock, which was not talked at all in the business 3 years ago. So in stock was very fragmented, was reserved for let's say, the commercial team. It was account by account, but now in stock is fully visible to everybody. So every morning, our CEO, executive vice president, everybody looks at this metric on a daily basis. It's the utmost, most important metric. So it drives everything we do. So again, that's the foundation. So by shifting to the in stock, for sure you work on lost sale. For sure you work on improving efficiency, not just for us, but let's say with our partners. So shared efficiency on working capital. And we see some heavy reduction in working capital on both sides. So
Mhm.
let's say a third on the retailer and 2/3 for us. And not only on when you look at the finished product, but also on the raw material that go through that chain. So for sure, the value also is on working capital. And
Mm.
of course, in terms of, let's say, the size of the team I need to run the business, for sure it's lower than before, because I don't have to have people that manually grab data, put it together, waste time. And Alloy does that for us. They're the expert. They have over I think 450 integrations. So
Mm.
they're always up to date with the recent change when retailer update their platform. So I don't have to worry about that. So I can only focus on what drives value, which we talk
Mm.
about.
Mhm.
So for sure, it's a big evolution, and the future, I think, is going to be the most exciting,
Mm.
because we already did let's say, the hard work. Let's say the integration of the ERP is not something you do in days. So we're ready for the next phase, and I'll let you, Joel, talk about it. But the roadmap that they have, I think, is really interesting in terms of pushing that the AI component to the next level. But we're all for it, and we want to be ahead of the game, right? So
Yeah.
in the industry, because for sure, I think others are gonna follow or are probably following, but we really want to be there for our partners or retailers and be the partner of choice. So ahead of the game, the in stock, that's really the most important.
Yeah. So absolutely. And maybe Joel, you can lend some insight to this, but as you look at the future, near term future, it's hard to predict these days, but I don't know, 12 to 18 months out, with a lot of claims being made around what the autonomous supply chain looks like. That's one word. Or what the hands-free supply chain looks like, right? Effectively making some pretty aspirational claims about how much execution work can actually be done by things like AI agents, right? As opposed to just guiding human decision making, right? That's sort of the fundamental premise of agentic AI, is that it actually does the work, based on, highly informed positions, if you will, that they develop based on data sets and analysis and whatnot. So I guess the question is, Joel, as you look forward with your partnership with Cascade, what is the role of AI going forward? Maybe, obviously across your entire customer base, in delivering more value to folks like Cascade and ultimately, continuing to raise that bar when it comes to innovation.
Yeah, so let me give a very concrete example, because I think AI is both over and under hyped at the same time, in my belief. Like, I think it is everywhere you go right now. Every company is touting AI. Everybody's talking about it in their earnings calls.
Yep.
And of course, I think you dig a little deeper, and 9 times out of 10, it's like, okay, this is marketing speak, or this is someone throwing a word around.
Yep.
And yet when you really see we aren't even scratching the surface of what is possible with the technology. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's insane, like, mm-hmm. and terrifying and exciting at the same time of what this is going to mean. But let me give a very practical example for us as a company that, we're an AI company, we're developing this, and what we see. We are rolling out as we speak to our first customers we've been making recommendations. So if we talk about lost sales, it starts with understanding that you have lost sales, as Xavier said, right? And making that a true north, which we're seeing more and more companies do, right? It's the easiest money I have. Like, just avoid the sale a customer wants to make, or avoid losing the sale a customer wants to make by making sure it's there, right? Nothing rocket science, but easy to say, hard to do. Once you get the data together, the natural next thing is, well, how do I avoid this? And some out of stocks are unavoidable. Sometimes there is, we work with a lot of health and beauty brands. Something goes TikTok famous. Like, you can't necessarily predict that. Okay. No forecasting algorithm is. So you're going to be on your back foot. But oftentimes you're looking, where do I have a problem that I could have anticipated? Like, this was because we didn't execute correctly. And so, we built this recommendation engine that will now turn that, hey, these are your lost sales. These are the ones you can avoid. And these are the orders that retailers should be making to you to avoid those out of stocks. And here's all the data to support that. So we've been doing that now for a couple of years. We have lots of great examples, including with Cascade and many other customers, millions of dollars of incremental orders that you get. But it still requires a person to log into Alloy, see the recommendation, export those results, write the email saying, hey, I think you should do X. And I see hundreds of these examples from our customers. And then maybe they get a response from that retailer saying, well, what about this? Or I don't have enough budget for that. I only have, all that. Well, now with AI, and again, we are rolling this out as we speak, we can do that whole process for you, right? We can write that initial email. We can send it. We can wait for the response from the retailer. When they come back and say, well, wait a minute, give me clarification. We have all the data to give them the clarification. We don't need a person to do that. So I think that's where you're seeing a lot of the exciting when you say, hey, how do we change from recommendations to actual action? Yeah. There's a very human element. By the way, the retailers are going to do the same thing, I guarantee you. Like, they're going to be building their own agents. Yes. They're going to be interacting back with their suppliers, and you're going to end up with 2 agents going back and forth with their respective information. But that is a very real thing that we are seeing customers use today. So this is not in the future. This isn't maybe it'll work. And of course, again, I think we're scratching the surface of what's going to be coming in the coming months and years.
We are, and although you mentioned, gosh, I mean, a great segue again, Joel. You talked about the human factor, right? There's there are humans. The sensational headlines like to say that it's the rise of the machines, right? But the humans are are a critical component of what's happening right now. If for no other reason, then there's this massive thing called change management, that organizational change management that is staring everybody in the face. And I guess this is one for especially for you, Xavier, about the human factor and what has happened and what you anticipate to happen at Cascade with regards to change management. I'm thinking about forecasters, supply planners, demand planners that are, career statisticians maybe, or perhaps they've gone through training, certification, education, years, decades, right? Very good at their job. And, they're managing production schedules, right? And perhaps they're doing that on spreadsheets. And, it's sort of the classic fear that, AI is going to take my job type of thing, or automation is going to take my job. And in many cases, as we're seeing in the headlines now, there are tens of thousands of jobs that are being, you could say, redeployed. Oracle and UKG and big tech companies that are making significant personnel moves. But I'm just curious how you and your team and your colleagues, Xavier, are thinking about this human reality as things evolve so quickly, technologically and operationally. What's happening organizationally? What's happening culturally? And what does that day-to-day planning job look like today versus yesterday and versus tomorrow, if you follow?
Yeah, for sure. And Joel, I think you're absolutely spot on. Today, let's say I have people with master degree spending a lot of time clicking in systems. So,
Mhm.
like Joel said, today we go in the alloy system. We still have to do, let's say, a dozen of clicks
Yep.
to get the info we want, like you say, write the email. So all of that, let's say for our team, is not really added value, right? So
Mhm.
today that happens also in IBP, in APO, in the planning system. So we have a lot of people doing a lot of clicking around, sending information by email, spreadsheets. And everybody's excited to go again to the next era, which will be, the system does that for you, and you're there to train. You're more, let's say, acting as a business expert rather than, a, I would say, let's say, a clerical, doing clerical tasks. So I think our job are going to be much more interesting because there's going to be, less time, a lot less time, I hope, spent on doing this thing. And by the way, there's also a lot of people communicating within each other for very basic information. So
That's right.
we're really we're really hoping that the agentic AI is gonna empower our jobs.
Yeah.
And obviously the skill and the talent pool that we have obviously is going to be people with more expertise and let's say to the level of, let's say, bachelor master's degree. So for sure it's going to head towards that, but it's nothing that is scary for us. So we're not we already started, let's say, that we were aware that transformation was coming, so we're not super heavy on people, and we're really, again, always focusing on having the right talent that's going to be able to leverage the technology. Let's say
Right.
we have people working with the alloy team on a daily basis. We're pushing the system, we're pushing the limit. So like Joel said, let's say, I think you said we're demanding, but you know we have people that are experts that can do that, and that's really important to
Yeah.
have this kind of skill set for
Yeah,
us.
it's really exciting. I mean, it's terrifying and exciting. I think Joel, you said, or something like that. It is because
Yeah.
I'm starting to see people sharing org charts that are delineating between human labor and machine labor. Right? They're basically showing workflows and tasks that are now the responsibility of humans as opposed to agents, right? And the agents have names. I mean, not like Bob and Sally, but they have names that are indicative of the task that they complete, or multiple tasks, right? And so, to your point, some of those tasks that have historically been done maybe begrudgingly or out of necessity by people that might be overqualified. They're now delegated, right, to agents, right, fit for purpose agents, right. And so I think I'm obviously I'm seeing this across the board, and I think, and we're going to run out of time here, guys, but I think we could probably go forever. Good thing this is a multi-episode podcast, so we'll be back. We'll be back more later. But I wanted to kind of dive in. Xavier, you gave some great examples already around like the toilet paper example, the panic buy example. There are things now that I would only imagine that your team is now capable of doing that couldn't even have been imagined years ago, right? Whether it was, call it pre-transformation, pre-IBP, pre-alloy, where you were living with a status quo that now would be unacceptable, right? And I'm curious if there are any sort of standout examples that might serve as instructive for the thousands of people that are listening when it comes to like are there sort of quintessential example where you were able to you were able to either through a metric like OTIF or on the shelf or some other kind of systemic improvement that you were able to make that resulted in customer retention or expansion or something that just kind of proves out the story that you've been telling us so far? Anything that comes to mind?
Well, I already mentioned the lost sale improvement that happened pretty quickly, but at the same time, our business grew by 10% and in stock improved by 2-3%.
Okay.
And it might not seem a lot to have 2-3% in stock, but it requires a different level of depth and knowledge of your retailer's partner supply chain. One example, let's say it's not all, and Joel, you're right, it's the engine in alloy is about, let's say, one of the big benefit is the replenishment recommendation. So you touched that. So there might not be sufficient level of orders from the retailer. So we're able to detect that to the SKU, to the DC level. So that's one thing. But we're also, to give another example, we're able to detect also if there's a flaw or sometime a glitch in the retailer system. Let's say there's no distribution happening between a DC to stores, to a cluster of stores. So we're also able to detect that, which in the past, we would never be able to. So we're kind of a second pair of eyes for the retailer because they might have not spotted it. They might have something else to do. Their expert might be on vacation and then you have someone else covering and that person doesn't have all that knowledge. So we're able to just jump in at the same time and have that pair of eyes watching, and because we flag those stuff now. We never did in the past. And again, on a daily basis, we look at the in-stock for everybody, for all the SKUs. So just to have that metric in our face, sorry for the expression, but in our face on a daily basis drives totally different behavior from the entire team, not just supply chain team, commercial, operation, because we onboard everybody with this metric. So operation team is well aware of what it means and they follow it as well. And that's, I think, the biggest shift that we did and the most valuable one for us and ultimately for our retailers. So I think that's another good example. That
Joel, I'm gonna give you the last word in the spirit of what's to come, right? Forward looking, and perhaps in the spirit of giving advice to people who are listening, looking for something actionable. When you think about the role that AI is going to play in supply chain planning specifically, Joel and team, you guys have a lot of experience in retail and consumer goods. Do you have any statements, any sort of like futurist perspectives on where agentic is going to take us in the supply chain space, specifically with regards to planning? It doesn't have to be anything I'm going to hold you to, but anything you expect to be seeing in the next few, say 12 to 18 months that you'd say folks that are in roles like Xavier should be preparing for or expecting?
Well, I think Xavier actually summarized it really well. First of all, there's a lot more that's exciting here. Again, it is a little scary because our jobs are all changing. All of ours. My job's changing. But he just commented on how we're getting out of the clerical work. I think that's the term that Xavier used.
Yes.
And that to me is exciting. We all do. I do lots of clerical type of work, right? I'm responding to emails. I'm having to click a bunch of buttons. They add up, they take time. And I think that to me is what's exciting is I think our roles are everybody's going to become kind of a manager of AI. I get to give it ideas, and we're still going to be very important in that. Anybody who's spent time developing with AI, it is so much about what are the instruction you're getting? How do you iterate with it? And then how do you review the outputs and then usually continue to iterate? So
That's right.
I think, our roles are evolving. Everyone needs to kind of embrace that. I think the mistake people make is they start to say, oh, I don't want to use this because I'm concerned about what it means. And candidly, then somebody else who uses AI is going to take your job. AI is not going to take your job. It's going to be somebody who uses it effectively.
Yeah.
And so that really should be the perspective. But we are, I think my recommendations to people right now is just start using it and trying it. I mean, I use it obviously a lot professionally. I use it personally. I mean, I built my own running coach because I love to run, and and it's fun to iterate with it and to tell it every day, okay, well, let's change how we're doing this calculation, or I don't like this logic.
Yeah.
And the more you use it, the more I think you see both the incredible strengths it has, and it will blow you away, and also how dumb it can be.
Yeah.
I mean, there are times that it really doesn't work, and I think that gives you greater confidence of, again, I'm going to have an important role going forward. But I'm going to have hopefully more fun doing my job because I can spend my time doing the things that I'm really good at. I'm uniquely good at that. It's going to be hard for a computer to replicate.
Yeah, it's very wise. It's very wise. Well, great, guys. I appreciate your time. It's really inspiring with the journey that the two companies represented here are on together. I mean, just the power of the partnership, the willingness to take some calculated risks. And to benefit from the results. I just think it's inspiring. So, gentlemen, I thank you for your generosity and your candor with this conversation. Joel and Xavier, thank you so much. There will be another episode coming, folks. We will have episode 2 in the early part of next month, where we would continue this conversation and continue to dive into, hopefully, some insights that will be useful to folks that are not only in retail and consumer goods, but perhaps in other industries where, of course, AI is also making an impact in the supply chain functions that we're also familiar with. So with that, thank you all. Again, any comments, questions, reactions, please drop them in the comments section. I want to thank SAP for helping to bring this podcast to life. This is Mark Vigoroso, founder and CEO of the Enterprise Edge. We'll catch you next time on the next episode. Take care, everybody.